All right, before we get on Trader Plane, let's just take a little look, see what's going on here. Oh, that's kind of bad. Okay, well, what's this? Oh, well, yeah, I mean, coronavirus bad, 70% down, not good. Okay, what about this one? Oh, wait, I have stocks in airlines. Uh-oh. That's bad. I mean, oh no. Well, if I can't buy an airplane, how do these guys buy an airplane? Hello and welcome back to the Spread Aviation Podcast. This is Rob Dumovic, and Matt is going to be joining a little bit later in the podcast. He helped out with an interview that we did with a couple of friends that we met at Oshkosh last year who had an opportunity to do some rather unique but important training that really should be available to everybody. So we're going to hear a little bit more about their experiences. Right now, the thing that's dominating the news cycle is the coronavirus, and it's not necessarily that Matt and I are what is it, social distancing or anything like that, but it's a cozy studio down here, so maybe it's not the best to be interacting right now. Let's keep our distance just a little bit. And for all of you out there who are sharing cockpits with other pilots and other people and have to walk through airports and things like that, you know, we wish you the best. Our thoughts are with you, and hopefully you're being safe and taking the steps necessary to make sure that you stay healthy and don't have any delays or anything like that keep you out of the cockpit or keep you from flying. But the opening segment here to this podcast was a little bit of a video that expressed some of the concerns that we've been hearing about the airline industry and how they handle a slowdown like this and a financial crisis. Because, I mean, this is a worldwide market killer. And hey, the airlines are definitely something that is going to be affected. Now, this isn't their first rodeo either. So a lot of the major airlines that are out there, and some of the even newer ones, they've seen this before, and they've seen it within the last 10 to 15 years or so. But I wanted to do a little bit of research and find out how these companies adjust and adapt and survive an experience like this. And so I managed to get a hold of a couple of buddies of mine who work for aircraft leasing agencies. Now, because of the sensitive nature of what they do, who their clientele are and things like that, they couldn't really, they don't want me sharing their information, but they were very eager to help me understand so that I could help you understand where the companies, how the companies adapt and overcome in these times of strife and struggle. So let's kind of jump into this a little bit here. Really fun kind of things to pay attention to. I really like trends, and I like to look at the numbers, and I like to see statistics. But airline growth over the last 30 years or more has actually been at a steady 4.3 to 4.6% over that time period. And during previous big issues where there were drops in airline usage or financial markets and things like that, yeah, you saw a valley in the performance and the amount of passengers who were flying. However, when it did pick back up again, where that valley came back up to a peak, it actually came back up not to a point of 4.3 or 4.6% growth from the valley, but from where it left off and it first diverged down to the valley in the first place. So here we have a chart showing this is from Boeing, air travel resilient despite financial and geopolitical changes. If you're watching the video form of this, you'll see this on the screen. We have first oil shock recession in the mid 1970s, second oil shock recession in 79 to 80, and then Gulf War number one in 1990, 1991, Asian financial crisis, which, I mean, I was 13 at the time, so I wasn't really paying much attention there. 9/11 recession, Gulf War II, and the SARS outbreak, 2001 through 2003, and then the global financial crisis in 2007, 2008. But you notice, if you plot this out, you would actually see the curvature here and how it meets up back on the other side after the dip. So it's a very interesting take. And this is not just Boeing. Airbus is showing the same trends, though a 4.3% growth. Same trends, same connection, same curvature, and it just keeps rejoining. The curvature keeps rejoining as if no financial crisis or no problem had happened to cause a slowdown or anything like that. These documents are freely accessible. You can find them on Boeing and Airbus's websites, and I'll post a link to it. And the data that comes from this is from ICAO. So it's not even necessarily that it's slanted towards any particular company. They're tracking global, worldwide usage of the aircraft and how the airlines have adapted to these things. Or how they've bounced back. So very interesting to see that. So it's not the first time that we've seen this. So we can, I don't ever want anybody to panic, but I want them to understand what's happening and where it's going to go, and maybe take a little bit of comfort in that. So between 9/11, SARS, and some of these other Gulf War #1 and some of these other issues that have happened in the industry, we've always seen it bounce back. So we can have a little bit of confidence that this trend is likely to continue. Recently, within the last 24 hours, at the time of this recording, it's been announced that we're stopping flights to the European Union. We're stopping flights to and from Europe from the United States. This last happened during 9/11, September 11th, 2001. That lasted for 6 weeks. And prior to that, we stopped these flights during World War II. The only thing that we were sending over there was material support and troops in the form of aircraft, bombers, and things that could do the island hopping, C-47s, C-46s, and some of those aircraft that would island hop up along the Arctic Circle. And then the other aircraft that were shorter range that couldn't necessarily do that hop, that we'd package them up and ship them across. That was World War II. So this is not the first time this has happened. It's probably not going to be the last time it happens, especially if we see a significant decrease in the rate of infection from these steps that are being taken. Okay, so all right, if this is what it takes to keep people safe, then good. This is a good policy. This is a good thing. We should do this. No problems. So this trend that I talked about a little bit ago, this growth, it goes along with the increase in population. And as populations continue to increase throughout the world and countries continue to develop, mainly, let's say, India is exploding in not only population growth, but also in technology and industry, we see an increased demand in travel. So with that, we can continue to expect that these trends, that the demand for flights is going to pick back up once this particular disease has run its course. So I'm not really worried about that. However, this is still a time of struggle. And you are going to see the companies that are prepared for this, that have seen this before, and weren't operating right on the razor's thin margin. You're going to see them survive. They will make cuts, they will make changes, and you will see some other companies who are not set up to handle this kind of a slowdown or setback. You're going to see them go away. So there is going to be some problems. There are going to be some companies shutting down, and this is going to be a little bit of survival of the fittest. But for the most part, those aircraft are going to get absorbed into some other company. Those pilots are going to get absorbed into something else. And when things start to pick back up again, there will be a need to branch off, break off, or create new opportunities going forward. And we'll see the growth again. hopefully this is a short-term thing, maybe 6 months or less. But even if it was a year or 2 years, it's not like we haven't seen that before, most notably 2007, 2008. Yeah, I mean that's our most recent. That's at least what's fresh in my mind. And I was a flight instructor, just became a flight instructor during that period. And I remember that the people in the seniority list that were above me, like I was number 32 in the seniority list, and I was in the 20s for a very long time because nobody above us moved up to the airlines. So it took a couple of years, and then all of a sudden I was number 7. Like, okay, everybody's gone. Now it's up to us, our younger crop. And then they were hiring everybody from the CFI class again, whereas before they were only taking 1 or 2, the top 1 or 2 from the class. The others had to kind of fend for themselves, either going to other schools, and some of them did. Some of them went down to Florida. But anyway, I digress. So the airlines are facing this time of financial struggle, and they're doing everything they can to kind of fill seats. And there's a handful of ways that are going to help them be able to stay afloat. And one of them, and this is kind of serendipitous, is this oil battle between Russia and Saudi Arabia. So Russia was trying to harm the U.S. fracking industry because the U.S. fracking was turning out cheap gas, and that's driving down the price of a barrel of oil. That's going to change the cost of operation for each flight, and it's going to what they call that load factor. So if your 80% is your break-even point, now with the lower oil prices, you only have to hit 60%. Let's say, I'm just throwing out a number there. Let's just say you only have to hit 60% in order to hit that break-even point. So if the flight is 60% full, now it's at least profit neutral, if not profitable, whereas before you had to have those seats 80%, the aircraft 80% full. Okay, well, it still helps to have a full aircraft. So what the airlines will do is they'll take that 20% and they'll just chop it off the prices. Now you've got cheap airline tickets. Go where you want to go, fill up the aircraft, yada, 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 as long as you're also willing to take the risk of being in a confined place with recirculated air with people who may or may not be carrying this disease. And if you're a young, healthy person or don't have underlying illnesses or anything else compromising your immune system, more than likely you'll be fine. But the danger there then becomes, well, you could be carrying this without having any symptoms. Okay. That's bad. Wash your hands. Be a good person. I don't know. Okay, so this oil battle helping the airlines out. The other thing that's happening is not a lot of airlines own their whole fleet. For the most part, they lease them from a private owner. One of the big examples of that I'm aware of is Stephen Udvar-Hazy, most well known, I suppose, in our world as being having his name, having his name on a wing of the Smithsonian at Dulles International Airport, and it's a beautiful museum. But Stephen made his money because he owns all of the 737s that Southwest is flying and operating. So he owns those aircraft. Southwest pays him a leasing fee, and that's how he makes his money. He's not the only one. And the numbers and things that I'm about to talk about don't necessarily mean he's doing it, but some of the other leasing companies are doing some things like a rent holiday. The government did this back in, Obama did this in 2011 or so, where they did a tax holiday, trying to combat the recession by telling employers, hey, you don't have to pay the federal payroll tax. That'll help you out. That'll help your employees out. The employees will have a little extra money. They'll be able to go out and spend that at other businesses, and that's going to help the economy. It's going to help the small businesses stay open and functioning, and we'll make our tax money back that way. So a rent holiday is where a leasing agent may offer a 10 to 30% lease reduction in their monthly cost, and say they'll do that for a year. But at the end of that year, hopefully things have turned around and now the economy is doing better and everybody's making money again. Then they'll say, okay, we're going to raise it back up, but we're going to bring it up 15%, or we're going to bring it up 40%, just a little bit extra to help make the money back that we didn't have back then. So they'll kind of renegotiate that rate at the expiration date, whenever that may be. So a rent holiday is one way that the airlines can save a little bit of money. Another way is that the airlines that do own their own aircraft, a leasing company may come in, kind of like J.G. Wentworth, need cash now. And they'll say, hey, you have this $20 million aircraft. We'll give you $18 million for it right now. That's cash in your pocket, helps you continue to pay payroll, buy gas, pay insurance, and do all the continue to operate your company. And we'll lease it back to you for, let's say, $200,000 a month. Okay. And then after the lease is over, the airline returns the aircraft to the leasing company, or they buy it back from the leasing company. So the leasing company buys the airplane. It never leaves the airline's hands, but now they pay a leasing fee per month on the aircraft, still get to use it, and then they have an influx of cash right there. So it's good to have that capital right there to pay the bills, and hopefully you can kind of float your way along and continue to operate until things turn around. So this is a pretty interesting way that the aircraft airlines can continue to function, continue to operate, and the leaseback companies can basically acquire another aircraft. And then at the end of that period, if the airline wants to buy the aircraft back, they can. If they're going to buy a new aircraft, something that carries more people, burns less gas, whatever, newer, then they have that option as well. The leasing company is happy because they still own basically an $18 million aircraft and maybe suffered a couple $1 million worth of depreciation in whatever time frame that was. But there are other markets out there and other airlines that have sprung up or are doing better as well, and maybe looking to purchase one of those aircraft or do another leaseback. A lot of aircraft just kind of move around and change hands, a lot of airframes. So that's a couple different ways that these companies can keep going. Some interesting statistics that have happened over the last 3 months with the coronavirus outbreak is that 70% of the airline aircraft in China have been grounded in the last couple weeks. So there's about 4,000 airliners in China. 2,800 have been sitting on the ground. That's an interesting stat. It shows how you can kind of close off a country and limit it from the outside world. And now China is a communist regime. They have the power to tell a company, hey, you're not doing anything right now. They have the power to tell their citizenry, you're not leaving the house. And they've exercised that in an effort to try and contain this virus. So seeing that 70% of their airliners are on the ground is extremely, extremely eye-opening. As far as the aircraft that normally would be flying the route from U.S. to Europe, when that ban goes into effect Friday night at midnight or Saturday morning at midnight, depending on how you want to look at it, the airlines that are operating those may decide to reassign those, and they may put them on other routes. I'm not sure what they'll do with them. However, they're probably still going to get used, because if the aircraft is sitting on the ground, it's not really making you any money. Now, over the last year, we've had issues with the 737 MAX, and there's 850 MAXs out there, give or take a handful. 300 have already been delivered to the airlines since they started production, and those are just sitting on the ground. So as soon as that aircraft gets cleared to fly, that's going to add to the capacity that the airlines can operate. Well, then they need crews to fill those aircraft. And then the other 550 that are sitting on the ground more than likely will be purchased by airlines and put to use as well. And you're going to need to crew all those aircraft. And I mean, at worst, they're going to replace 550 aging aircraft. So I'm not really worried about pilots not having jobs at this point. It's more going to be about whether the public trusts the aircraft. That's kind of a topic for a different time. But, for now, the big takeaways from what's happening in the industry right now are that we've seen this before. We've seen this kind of slow down before. The statistics, the models, and everything that we've seen in the past shows that we are still going to see growth after this is all over, of a magnitude as if it didn't even exist. It didn't even happen in the first place. But some of us may need to eat peanut butter for a little while. It's cheap and it's got nutrients and stuff. So that's really all I've got to say on how the airliners are going to get through this. If you have any questions, comments, or even concerns, I'd love to hear from you. Hello at spreadaviation.com. So yeah, I'll have links on the Facebook for where I got these documents from. Really awesome stuff. You can look over. It's a really big report. Actually, both of these are very large reports. But very, very interesting stuff. Hopefully nobody is panicking and screaming about the sky falling right now. We're going to get over this. We're going to get past this. It's going to be all right. Okay, so that news aside, I want to talk about a couple things before we get on to the interview real quick. We have some new shirts for sale on the website, Orville, Wilbur, and me. So you can check these out, get these on the website. We got new lower pricing on these. They're $20, and I'm thinking there's even going to be a promo code. It'll be like right in here somewhere, right in this area. So head on over to our website, check that out. That's under the swag button. We also have our a fresh batch of our original Spread Aviation shirts in stock as well. So definitely check those out. Hit us up, and those are a classic. So I will be at Sun and Fun this year. Excited about that. Hopefully I get to see a handful of fans out there as well. And we are making plans to be at Oshkosh. So hopefully a lot of this has kind of blown over by then. But those are our plans right now for the future. And we'd love to buy an airplane. That'd be really neat as well. But we'll see about that. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over, send this over. I'm going to send this over to Rob and Matt, as well as Julia and Christine for joining. Thank them for joining us on the Spread Aviation podcast. So take it away, guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and please give a special welcome to our friends. We met them at Oshkosh. This is Julia and Christine. They're doing a special here with us live, and Matt is joining us remotely from Chicago. I'm in Boston. Julia, where are you?
I'm in New York.
You're in New York.
I'm in Chicago.
You're in Chicago, and Christine?
I'm in Nebraska.
I'm normally in Chicago, except when I'm in Boston, and right now I'm in New York.
Okay. So, yeah, all right. So we're all in different parts of the country, and through the wonders of technology, we're all able to be here together. And mainly, we're talking about something that is very special to me, Aerobatics, and I don't think this is a surprise that I like talking about it. But Julie and Christine had the opportunity to go down. Well, let's have them tell you about it. Julia, where were you guys?
So a couple weeks ago, Christine and I flew down to St. Augustine, Florida, to fly with Patty Wagstaff and her flight school down there. And we both took her upset training and basic aerobatics course. So we got to fly the Super Decathlon and the Extra 300L.
Very nice. Christine, what did you think of the aerobatic airplanes?
Absolutely incredible, especially coming from a Cessna 150 and a 172. I've never even done a spin. I didn't have my spin endorsement. So this was all this looks like it would be fun. And Julia talked me into it, and now I'm obsessed with it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And the spin endorsement is a requirement for those folks who are going through CFI training in order to teach other people how to fly airplanes. And Julia, you're an ATP. Are you a CFI as well?
I am, yeah. I keep my CFI, CFII current. I haven't instructed in a few years, but I've mentally dabbled around with the idea of getting back into the instructing game part-time at some point for maybe tailwheel transition and basic aerobatics once I get to that point. So.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
we welcome more people in that industry because, in my opinion, tailwheel, it's not necessarily a dying art, but it's one of the more eye-opening, more skill-enhancing training materials or training events that you can do. And I still remember my first takeoff in a tailwheel airplane. It was a 115 horsepower Citabria, and climbing out, put the stick to the left to turn to the crosswind, and the nose went to the right, and I went, oh, that's what my feet are for. And from that point on, I was absolutely hooked. And I was already a commercial single engine land pilot at the time, working on my multi. But Christine, had you flown tailwheel airplanes before this at all, or anything like that?
I haven't done anything along those lines. I actually just started flying about a year ago. So, yeah, tailwheel is one of those things that I am now working on. I just got an instructor here in Nebraska like 3 days ago.
Yay!
Yeah, so it's amazing the precision that's required when you fly tailwheel. Not something you. I mean, you do need to be a precise flyer regardless. However, the tricycle, it definitely it makes you think you're a little better than you are. Because as soon as you get into a tailwheel, you're like, oh, okay, this is really how you fly. So
Matt, I don't want you to feel
increases your
bad.
skills.
I don't want you to feel bad that Christine only really started flying a year ago, and she's now already a commercial multi with a Kinger job. Everybody takes their own time and does it at their own pace.
Yeah.
You're gonna be fine. We'll get you done one of these days.
Yep. I gotta
I
get
put
my
my
medical.
tab and went all in, so that's how that worked. So.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, you have a little bit of free time now, so once you get your medical back,
This is true.
hit it hard.
This is true. Yep.
All right, so Patty Wagstaff School down in St. Augustine. It's not necessarily a new school. They've been in operation, I think, since 2014 or late 2014.
That sounds right.
And you were down there with Patty, Alan, and was Spencer there while you were there?
We got to meet Spencer. He typically only flies on weekends because he does still have a day job. But we were there during the week, so we flew exclusively with Alan and Patty.
Very good. And a level of instruction, you're both experienced flyers and experienced students at this time. How would you rate it? Rate the instruction down there?
You go first.
What?
Exquisite. It was.
Oh, exquisite.
I mean,
You guys said it at the exact same time, and it like canceled out. No, I didn't even hear it. That's amazing.
It was honestly some of the best instruction I've received, especially in terms of explaining things in terms that make sense to anyone, regardless of experience level. I do have some experience with aerobatics. I did about 3 or 4 hours of it about 4 years ago. So I had a little bit of background, especially from the aerodynamic side. I was more familiar with a lot of it, but it was Alan is amazing at ground school. He is funny, but very smart and very fun to sit in ground school with. We had a bad weather day our first day there, and so we did a few hours of ground, but it didn't get boring because when you're talking about fun types of flying with a fun instructor, I think you could do that pretty much all day. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Christine, do you have anything to add to that necessarily?
I mean, honestly, ground typically isn't that fun for anyone because naturally, as pilots, we want to fly. You know, we need obviously to have all the ground instruction, but we want to fly. And I can honestly say for someone that has a hard time sitting still, having ground with Alan was awesome. He really is great. I've had, a few instructors, obviously, with everything that I've done over this past year. And he by far, and this is no knock on my other instructors, but he just made it so much fun. He was hilarious. And it didn't matter if you were super experienced or if you were like me, who had never even thought about doing aerobatics until, about 7 months ago. So It's truly for everyone. And he's great. He doesn't make you feel dumb at all.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
That's the mark of a professional.
And what would you say is the biggest thing you took away, or the biggest memory you have of the experience while you were down there? Just like the one thing that stands out. I'm sure there's a lot, but is there one thing that stood out as something that you said, oh, I have to remember this?
Julia, you got to tell your story about just,
Okay.
wanting to fly with Patty for so long.
Right. So I have been mentored by Patty since I was about 11 or 12 years old. When I was 8, I went to Oshkosh with my dad, and I was 8 years old, and I just wanted to go to the kids zone and play with the toy planes. But we were at the air show, and he said, you need to stop and watch this. This is Patty Wagstaff. You should check her out. And so from that point, I really admired her. And then when I was about 12, I emailed her, and she emailed me back. And we started a relationship emailing. I started taking flying lessons when I was 13. So I would email her questions, and she just was like, hey, you're interested in aerobatics. I was like, I want to do that. What she's doing, that's what I want to do. And so she invited me to shadow her at Oshkosh one year, and then that kind of continued. And so she really took me under her wing and taught me about the air show industry, and encouraged me all through my ratings, wrote me letters of recommendation, was a reference as I was applying for professional flying jobs. So we've had a long time relationship, and she's been telling me I need to come fly with her at her school for a very long time. And I have always wanted to, but never quite had the right combination of time and money. And so the stars began to align. I'm in a great place with my career right now. And so at Oshkosh, Christine and I just committed. We're like, we're gonna actually go do this. And so for me, my best memory was my extra flight with Patty, flying with Patty in the extra. The plane that I saw her fly, the extra 300, the 2-seat version for instruction, but getting to fly with her in that and have her kind of demo parts of her air show routine and teach me all sorts of different things, as many G's as I could handle, basically, was probably one of the most special flights I think I'll ever get. So,
wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'll remember that forever. And I have it on GoPro, so.
Oh, nice. Even better.
So you literally get to have it forever. That's excellent. Yep. There's something about meeting your heroes, and normally people are cautioned, don't meet your heroes. But in this case, Patty has always been an outstanding person to everyone that I've really ever seen her interact with. I've had a couple of interactions with her, and she's just been nothing but cordial and giving of her time. Even when busy Oshkosh, she's running around, she was always willing to say hi, and even did a little 30-second blurb with us on video a couple years ago. And just spontaneous and funny and just outstanding as a person. Christine, when you went down there having kind of a lower flight time experience level, did you have any expectations getting into it, or were there any doubts or fears or anything? And how did you maybe overcome those if you did have any?
I had a lot of doubts and a lot of fears, as Julia knows, because I expressed them overly, probably too much. I wasn't so much nervous about the actual aerobatics themselves and doing that. I wasn't nervous about getting in the plane. I wasn't nervous about any of that. What I was nervous about was being able to actually do it myself, to be able to put what they were telling me into action when I was still trying to learn how to fly. So I just started my job as a King Air recently, or in a King Air recently. So I'm just trying to learn how to fly that thing. And then I'm over here thinking I'm going to go do these aerobatics right after I finish that training. So that was my biggest concern. But the reason I went there, the biggest reason I went there, other than the fact that Julia really did get me hyped up on this, and I really am glad that she did. I've seen aerobatic pilots, and I think it's amazing, but it's not something I ever thought I could do until I met Julia, which, by the way, I just met her at Oshkosh. We just met, and we just we've just hit it off. It's awesome. Yeah. But the big reason I went there was for confidence building. It's just, you really need to, in my opinion, know how a plane flies and know all the aerodynamics for you to really be a safe pilot and be a confident pilot. And so I went all in and said, all right, if I can't be confident coming out of this, I'm never going to be confident And sure as can be, I walked out of there, and I probably am more confident than I've ever thought that I could be in an airplane.
Wow.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that kind of training, the confidence that you talk about gaining, it's something that you can only gain by seeing these areas of the flight envelope that you are only going to get if you can get into an airplane that's capable and you're wearing parachutes and you have a qualified instructor. If you look at the flight envelope as 60 degrees of roll to 60 degrees of roll and 25 degrees of pitch up, 10 degrees of pitch down, if you break that down into the whole 360, 360, that's only 11% of the flight envelope. And that's 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right, 25 up, 10 down. That's all a commercial pilot is ever really going to see in their training. And so what happens if you find yourself in your airplane, whatever airframe it may be, beyond those limitations? And what you may have learned inside that 60 degrees, it's actually going to hurt you if you find yourself outside of it. And so getting that training, I think, is extremely valuable. And hopefully the both of you have agree with that statement, I suppose.
Most definitely. I think it's great. I mean, just the thought that you really can translate everything that you learn in an aerobatic plane to a normal plane. Obviously, you're not going to do that on a normal basis. But if you do get yourself in one of those situations, I mean, now I'm confident I can get myself out of it. So
Absolutely. Got to know how to fix it. Matt, we haven't really been talking to you too much. Do you have anything to add or anything to say?
Well, I mean, most important question, I think, of the conversation is that while you were in St. Augustine, did you get to check out any of the downtown area and the food and all that? Because St. Augustine is awesome for that. A little off topic, but
we did.
Yep.
We stayed in an Airbnb walking distance from downtown,
Cool.
and it's such a cool little area in northeast Florida, and we had a blast. I mean, we had so much fun outside of the flying, but the flying was definitely the highlight.
Oh, yeah.
The weather patterns in that area are a little bit unique. Did you encounter any weather issues while you were doing your training?
Yeah, actually, the first day we were supposed to fly was IFR the entire day and into the next morning. So we had like socked in ceilings and visibility was just garbage. So then we went downtown and went for a walk and, just kind of hung out. But it cleared up enough the next 2 days. So actually what happened was the course that we took is supposed to be 5 flights, and we were only able to do 4. So Christine and I took this opportunity to go back. We're going back April 30th, and we're each doing more than 1 flight. So,
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Can't
like
say.
I said, I'm hooked now. You do it once, and
April 30th. Got to get down
you do
there.
it once and you're hooked. I'm telling you, it's amazing. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and long term for me, I, again, have always wanted to fly aerobatics. So my goals are competition oriented. And so continuing to practice on a semi-regular basis is pretty much the only way to get there. So I'm excited to spend some time stringing maneuvers together and flying some sequences on our next trip. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And Christine, any goals for the future besides just going back down on the 30th?
Yeah, actually, I would love to get into competitions. So that was not something that I thought that I was going to do. I thought about it again after Oshkosh is when this all kicked in. Again, never thought I could do this. And then after Osh, it was like, maybe I can. This could be a possibility. And now after this, I'm like, I would love to do this. And now it just comes down to, finding someone in my area that's a great instructor. It's kind of hard to go from Patty Wagstaff to any other instructor. So
Those are big shoes to fill. Yeah.
it's
IAC.org.
but both are amazing. But,
True.
yeah.
IAC.org has a great link at the top of the website. It's how to begin, and you can find a local flight school in your area. So that's a resource for everybody out there to check out, IAC.org. And Patty Wagstaff School down in St. Augustine, Florida. They just released their Intro to Aerobatics online course, and it has a Sporties portal for that as well. It's $49.99. So if you're interested in getting into aerobatics, check that out. That's going to be an awesome course. I'm all out of questions at this point. Matt, do you have anything more?
I'm also out of questions. This was really enlightening, good introduction. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, Julia, Christine, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to share? Christine, I'll start with you.
If you have any reservations about doing aerobatics, get rid of them, because you're absolutely gonna love it. You just, I mean, some people do have a little problem with the G's getting sick. You know, their stomach gets a little upset, but they have this fun little thing you put. What is that, Julia? I don't know what it is.
It's like an electromagnetic.
It's a relief band.
Yeah, it's a relief band, and
Yeah.
I didn't use it, and Christine barely used it either. We both took to it very well. So
yeah, I went ahead and put it on because I was like, oh gosh, am I going to get sick? And I truly didn't have any problems. The first day, towards the end of the first flight, I was like, I'm feeling like maybe a little off, but nothing bad. And then second day, no problem. It was fine. So I can't stress it enough. As someone who never thought they could do something like that and was nervous to try it, like just do it. You only live once. Do it.
You did say something in the last little segment where you were said at Oshkosh, I wasn't sure if I could do it, and now I know that I can. You know, those weren't your exact words, and that's the kind of hurdle that we need to get over. We need to get over ourselves. We need to get over what's in here and go out and do it and get with somebody qualified and go and do it right. That's a very excellent statement. You can do this too. Julia, final thoughts.
Well, yeah, obviously I'm a big fan of aerobatics, but I really think that the upset training is something that every pilot should do. So at Patty School, they have a 2-hour course, but you can look, most aerobatic schools have just upset training, just a couple of hours of spending some time really getting upside down in ways that you don't ever see, flight attitudes that you don't typically see in other types of training. And it's so helpful to get muscle memory that is helpful versus your body's intuitive muscle memory is bad. And what you will do if you don't have this level of training, if put into that situation, could make the situation worse. But if you get this training, you can remember, oh, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. Unload the airplane. Don't just rip it through a split S where you're going to exceed VNE and so many G's rip the wings off. Like that's
you don't know how much altitude that's going to take to geek that radius either.
You're like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I know what this looks like. I know what to do, and I know how to get myself, my airplane, my passengers safely to their destination, to an airport.
You've done upsets in the sim for your airline training as well.
They're garbage.
Is there any comparison?
They're garbage. Okay, so it's the best you can do. There's no G sensation in the sim. And even so, they recently have started doing more extreme upsets, but the worst I've ever seen is like a knife edge. But it's not extensive enough, and you don't really get the sensations of flight, because what's most unnerving is the actual sensations of hanging by your 5-point harness, right? And when you actually get to see that, and then it's no longer unnerving, I mean, you are just such a more, again, confident pilot, because you know that regardless of what kind of sticky situation you might get into, either via wake turbulence or something else, it's something that you can safely fly out of. So.
Absolutely. Yep. The best response to a threat is good training and good action. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Thank you very much for joining us, Julie and Christine. We wish you the best of luck in the future. At April 30th, head on down there. That's going to be awesome. If you get any pictures or anything you want to share with us, we'd love to have them as well. Check out Patty Wagstaff.
Awesome.
Check out Patty Wagstaff School. I think it's pattywagstaff.com. It's real simple like that. And everybody out there, thank you for joining us, and fly safe.
Take care.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Julie and Christine. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. If you're interested in Patty Wagstaff, if you're interested in heading down to Patty Wagstaff School for aerobatics, basic, advanced, beginner, maybe even instruction in your own aircraft, or upset recovery training, or tailwheel transition, check out pattywagstaff.com. And tell them Spread Aviation sent you. There's no discount code or anything like that, but I mean, it helps us out. All right, so that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope everybody out there is having a good time and is not in any way, shape, or form suffering through this time. If you liked what you heard, tell your friends. If you didn't, tell your enemies. We'll take their money too. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe to YouTube, Spread Aviation, as well as, Twitter, Instagram. We're big on Instagram. We're trying to get bigger on Twitter. And the Monday night live streams at twitch.tv/spreadaviation, usually beginning around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time. Now it is. And we're glad that everybody could have us. One last parting nugget of knowledge for you. The 3-second rule does not apply during this time. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and fly safe.